first podcast for Ammon's Answers. We're going to give it a run. We might bomb the whole thing. Might be a total waste of your time, but we're going to give it a shot. Our goal here is, of course, I'm running for governor, and I am wanting to answer questions. And I've got my friend here, Aaron. He's going to help me do that, and we're just going to have a good conversation and hopefully answer a lot of questions and get some things done. So prepare in the future for questions, and this is where we answer them. This is where it's going to be. What do you think?
Yeah, the plan is we're going to do it weekly. I think that's the goal. And then we hope it's beneficial to you, the viewers, right? And that they'll want to share it with their friends, their neighbors, anyone that votes here in Idaho.
Yeah, this is where they can ask anything, right? Well, I've always said in all the town halls and meet and greets that I'll answer any question except if it's something like personal between my wife and I. Besides that, I'll answer any question because I'm an open book. Live by the sunlight is the best disinfectant, and so now's the time to answer. And so here I am.
Here you are. Well, we hope that you guys enjoy this. We hope that what we say is of value and you share it online. Follow our Facebook channels. You can also see us on votebundy.com. There'll be lots of links there. I'm still catching up on all this whole linking and liking and social media stuff, but it's important. All right. Well, we've got a couple topics we want to talk about starting off.
I think first, you ought to introduce yourself. I'll give a little bit of background myself, but I think people are interested in who you are, Aaron, why you're sitting right here.
That's a great question. Well, my name's Aaron. I live not far from Ammon. We've been buddies for a while. We met in the MTC, but then we got to know each other when we actually entered the mission field. We both served missions.
That's Missionary Training Center for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
That's right. So that's been, 25, 27 years?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Long time.
Yep. Oh.
That's very helpful.
Are you going to cut this out here?
All right. So my background, I'm a friend of Ammon. Our families are friends. I moved to Idaho in 2016. Had no idea what was in store. I lived in Virginia for about 20 years. I'm a government contractor. I do security work.
Imagine that.
And then here in Idaho, I actually started a couple businesses here. I've got a construction company. We do build custom homes and barns. But the newest one is a butcher shop, the Corner Butcher Shop.
Yeah.
I can do a plug.
That's right. You could
the Corner Butcher Shop. That's right. There's a shortage of butchers in Idaho.
That's awesome. Yep. So anyway, Aaron's been a good friend of mine, and I think one of the things that's unique here, Aaron, is that when you lay it all out, we believe pretty close to the same things, but you see things way different than I see things. And so our approach and the way we kind of, go at things is different. But when we roll it all out, we lay it all down, we believe the same thing or close to. And that's one of the reasons I thought, man, it'd be great if you would come on here, because you can maybe open my eyes a little bit to a different view, and then also we can have really good conversation about just topics that people might see in different ways. And we're not always going to agree, which we never have always agreed on everything, but it's a great, I think, forum for what we're doing here today. So
agreed. So do we want to jump into the first topic?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're going to talk about the case with Kyle Rittenhouse, not guilty. I think that was just on Friday, right?
Yeah, that was an amazing thing. I found it very interesting for many reasons, like the rest of the country seemed to be, or a lot of people did. But to me, it really spoke close to me because I went through the same thing. I was falsely prosecuted. I went through a 10-week trial. I was facing 106 years of minimum sentencing for basically exposing the government for what they were doing. And then I was found not guilty. Now, although there was I don't know. I guess it was, there was life that was taken. And the charges were very serious. And so it was, I was facing my entire life being taken away. And Kyle Rittenhouse was facing the very same things. And I think maybe I can shed a little different light on it with people, maybe from the inside looking out. And I think it'd be great to have a conversation about it.
Did you by chance get to see any of the televised court case?
Just a little bit of it, yeah.
I got sucked in. I was on my second monitor on my computer when I was working at the desk. I had it going on, and it was a real big distraction.
Which is interesting, Aaron, because in our trial, they would not allow anybody to even come in and even, have any type of audio, video, nothing. And those who were allowed in were restricted, and it was a complete dark trial. And so, they did not want what happened in Kyle's trial to happen in ours, which is to get a huge, huge amount of public support for us. And so they kept it, hidden and dark as much as they could,
right.
which I think is an injustice.
I agree. I will say, since you didn't watch much, I was really impressed with the judge, and he's gotten flack and praise on all sides,
right.
as you can imagine. But he, we know where the courts have kind of been going trending-wise, right? And I found him to be very fair. I found him to be, he was physically and verbally condemning the prosecution on the things that they were doing. And it wasn't an isolated incident. It was throughout the whole trial. And so that gave me confidence that we live in a nation full of laws, and that, sure, there are bad apples, but it's still a great country with a great system, and we just have to maintain and fight to make sure that we keep good, honest people in those key authority roles.
Yeah, it's interesting because of my experience, I look at it the same again, but kind of the other side, because I look at, you have an isolated instance where justice was provided in the court, because we have a situation now, at least on a federal level, because I don't know the state, but on a federal, 98% of the people that are prosecuted take a plea deal. And so they actually take a deal from the government because the government comes to them. But the problem with this is usually the charges are so trumped up and they're actually not specific to what they actually did. They're over-exaggerated. So in order to give the people, the perpetrator, a whole bunch of charges so that he'll take a plea deal. Because they'll say, like, we're either going to give you 20 years or you're going to take a plea deal and get a year and a half. Right. And they're like, the problem is the plea deal has nothing to do with what they did. They'll come along and say, well, let's say they're being accused of stealing something in a store or whatever it might be. And so then the prosecutors come along and they say, okay, stealing, breaking, entering, and they pile all these charges up, whether they did it or not, right? And now you're looking at 20 years. Or you can come over here and you can plead to obstruction of justice and do, a year and a day.
Right.
There was nothing to do with obstruction of justice, but they'll take that and put it on their record, and the prosecutors want the win. Right. In order to just get less time. So it's not justice. And then what happens is whoever they stole from, they never get restored back the damages because they weren't even found guilty on that. And so there is there's no justice. So, that's just an example. So you got 98% of the people in the federal system take pleas.
Okay.
And then that leaves 2%. And then of those 2%, only 2% of them win in court. Actually win a not guilty verdict. And so it's pretty hard to say that smaller percentage is actually that's justice, that it's that lopsided. And it isn't just, and I'll explain to you why, and I think because you've been pretty aware, because it's extremely, extremely difficult to get the truth in front of the jury, because the judge will do motions of limine, or the prosecutors will get the judge to rule their way where they can't talk about certain things, or like they'll make a very small scope. And so that's how they do it. So the jury never gets to hear the full truth, all the truth, and nothing but the truth. They only got to hear what the prosecutors wanted.
It's interesting you say that, because that actually is one of the gripes of those people who think that it should have been a different outcome. He should have been found guilty. They're like, the judge did not allow certain evidence to come to trial. Now, some of the things that I heard, and I was distracted when I was watching, but some of the things that I picked up on, they wanted to show pictures of Kyle. I guess he had a shirt that something says shot 3 and still alive, or something like that, still out and
after the fact.
After the fact, and posing on social media with people in pictures and things like that. And the judge like, absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not,
yeah.
right? Because that's not relevant to the self-defense
especially
charge.
after the case. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the judge does have to be careful.
It's important to do on that regard, because it had nothing to. It was after the fact.
It has like because the defense, or the prosecutors wanted to, prejudice the jury. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted the jury to look at him in a different light.
Hey, and on that note, let's jump to the video so you and I can actually see some of the stuff.
Awesome.
Swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
You may be seated.
There were 3 people right there.
Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the second count of the information, Richard McGinnis, we the jury find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the third count of the information, unknown male, we the jury find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we the jury find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Rosekreutz, we the jury find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
Members of the jury, are these your unanimous verdicts? Is there anyone who does not agree with the verdicts as read? Would you wish the jury poll?
Wow. Yeah. It brings back a lot of memories when they were
Now
reading
in Portland.
Yeah.
That's how it went down.
Yeah. Yep.
Not guilty.
In fact, there was
Not
5
guilty.
charges
Uh-huh.
in Portland, and they had me stand. I was the first one because there were 7 defendants. They had me
And
stand
they tried you all individually, but at the same time.
on the same trial. Yeah, and I stood up, and they had me stand, and again read off just like that each charge, and it was not guilty, not guilty. And I had a peace come over me, prior to it. So I had this peace of mind that whatever happened, I felt it was going to be the right thing. And so I wasn't as emotional. I had a great, respect and I don't know, at that point, like almost a love for the jury, that they would, because this was a Portland jury, and
Right.
I mean, there was a lot of injustices. We should have been tried where they accused us of, which would have been Harney County. But they were like, well, no, we're not going to be able to get a conviction in Harney County because
too many cowboy hats over there.
too many cowboys, too many people. There's no way. So they bring us to Portland, where they think that they can get a conviction, and a Portland jury unanimously found us not guilty, acquitted us on all charges. And so, watching this brings back a lot of emotions. I just because, and just when justice is so rare in these courts, that when it actually happens, to me it's just like amazing. And someone might say, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there saying that what happened in the courts was injustice. But I don't see it that way. I see an individual who was defending themselves. You know, you might have the question of like, well, why was he down there? You know, which I think they litigated that. You know, I think ultimately he was down there just like what we did here in Idaho, in Coeur d'Alene when Black Lives Matter came in there. We organized people to stand next to the businesses. They were armed to make sure that they were that no one broke into the businesses. They did the same thing in Boise. And I know that's why he was down there. I don't know how he got separated from everybody, and I don't know how he got isolated. But clearly at that point, and maybe that doesn't matter, because you know you can't say that just because you get isolated and you have a bunch of people that are wanting to literally kill you and beat you down with a skateboard or you know pull a gun on you, that just because you are isolated in that situation that somehow you don't get to defend yourself. I believe you do get to defend yourself. And I believe clearly he had a right to defend himself, and I'm grateful that he had the tools to do it. Otherwise, he would probably be dead, and it might be the other way around. It might be them prosecuting those who killed Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, that's a huge possibility, right?
Right.
Or maybe they wouldn't have done it because somehow there was, you know, the prosecutors were clearly political. So would have they just not prosecuted and somehow justified that and just let it? You know, we don't know. But it wasn't that way because an individual defended themselves, and he had the tools to do that. And he was you can tell he's a young kid. You know, it's not like he's this over massive, aggressive individual. And he was scared. He was frightened, and he was being attacked, and he defended himself.
Absolutely. That's what I think is most alarming. And this is not nothing new. You and I both talked about this. Is what the majority think is lawful is not accurate.
No, that's called
the
mob rule, yeah.
The prosecutor was actually talking about he brought the gun, so he forfeited his self-defense right. It's like, what? It was really laughable, and it's just like, wait a second. What's the point of a concealed carry permit? What's the point of right to bear arms? As soon as you do it, then you make it obsolete.
Right.
All right. Well, I think this is supposed to be a shorter one, right? Where this is a little teaser, see if we get any people that look at this.
So I do want to say something real quick. I know maybe we need to move on to another question, but there is a process that is supposed to qualify a prosecution. And that process is found both in the U.S. Constitution and in the Idaho State Constitution. And ultimately, if we go to the Fifth Amendment, it says no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment of indictment of a grand jury. And then it kind of goes on. So, and the reasoning why is a grand jury is a body of people, typically like 24 people, that sit on a jury. And the prosecutors, when they want to prosecute somebody for felony charges, they're supposed to go to the grand jury, and they're supposed to present the evidence of why they think that there was a crime committed here. And the grand jury is supposed to look at it all, do an investigation, and then come back and tell the prosecution that, okay, we authorize you to prosecute. But that process is pretty much watered down and not happening. And so now you've got these prosecutors who are liberals. They're of the a good amount of them are kind of the woke mentality, kind of going on with what's the movement here in the United States. And so they're more than happy to prosecute for all kinds of reasons that are political, that are more to their ideology. And so that's a problem. That's a problem because we don't have this check and balance in place to make sure that one or two people that are called prosecutors are not using the force of law to literally destroy somebody's life, even if they're not found guilty. This went on for over a year. Basically a grand jury said, no, it's self-defense. He has a right to bear arms. You're not going to prosecute this person. But we've diluted and almost completely dissolved the grand jury process. And so that's why we end up with all these, false prosecutions. And most of the time they end up as convictions.
Right. And we could spend a lot of time talking about this, right? The tactics prosecutors use to inflate the actual charges so that even we hope one sticks, and then that's going to be enough pain for you to take a plea deal, right? It goes on and on and on. And what you're saying is, and you and I have talked about this a few years ago, and I don't think, even though I feel like I'm somewhat knowledgeable on how our government's set up and the checks and balances thing, I really didn't even understand the whole I didn't know how it all worked, that the prosecutors didn't get to take the case on, that the grand jury is supposed to be the one. So anyways, that's maybe a topic for another episode. We probably should stay on script a little bit and jump to some of the some online questions that we received. I'm going to start with that first one from Brandy B4 via email. They say, hey there, one question I have is about taxes. With all the adjustments in taxes Ammon would like to make, I'm wondering if families that homeschool will have to pay public school taxes. Thanks so much.
Yeah, that's a good question. I do plan on eliminating property tax, personal income tax, and so I'm going to replace property tax with a consumption tax. That is what I'm proposing. And
for the audience, why don't you just say that real quick,
Yeah.
what that is?
So a consumption tax is basically when, in this case, when a home is sold, a tax will be assessed at that point. It'll be rolled into the mortgage, or they can just pay it flat out if they want. And once your mortgage is paid, you don't own any more taxes, and so you actually own your home. Getting rid of the property tax, where you're just taxed every year as long as you have property till the day you die. And if you go to votebundy.com, I broke it all out to show people like how it more than pays for the legitimate purposes of government. In fact, if you're not careful, get the right percentages, it's actually could be more taxes than the property tax. But the key, which we don't want, we want to minimize that. But the key is that you actually own your home. That when you pay off the mortgage, you own your home, and there is no taxes assessed every year. So, but to answer the question, no, because most homeschoolers that I've legitimate homeschoolers, they don't want the government telling them what they can do and what they they just don't want government involved. They don't want and so they don't want to on a list, and they don't want to be opt out of a list. They want to simply just be left alone, which is pretty much how it is in Idaho right now. And so if there was some way where you have to opt out in order to get a tax credit because you're educating your own children, then you're now on a list, and you're now have opting out, and and that could be manipulated, taken advantage of, and many other things. I think the better thing is just not worry about it. You have your consumption tax that would be paid at the time of the sale. Once you pay off your mortgage, you pay off your mortgage, and there's lots of things that we pay for tax-wise that we might not benefit from, So the answer would be no, there wouldn't be any special exemption for parents who want to educate their own children. It would simply be the government would be out of the way. And the tax over here, that some of it might go to the local school, would just be paid like everybody else has to pay it. And you would just have to say, look, even though I ride a bike and I ride a horse and I don't use the roads, I still have to pay for a fuel tax every time I buy any gas. I might be buying it for my lawnmower, right? And rather than doing a tit for a tat, I think that it's better just to leave it the way it is. Eliminate the property tax, replace it with a consumption tax, and not have any opt-in and opt-out options.
Right. Well, I think that kind of goes along with the whole when consumers that, in this case, a citizen who doesn't have children, right? Whether
Right.
they are they
Exactly.
also lumped into that, right?
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
they're not, right? Because we hope as a community, we want to have an educated population, right? We want to make sure that our neighbors can read, write, know basic stuff. So we all benefit from that, whether we have kids or not.
Yeah. So, you bring up a good point. Like, if you don't have children, maybe you did, or maybe you never had children, and you're still having to pay, a tax that would go into public education. can you exempt yourself out? And the answer is no. And should you be able to? Well, that's a whole nother discussion, right? But so if you're a parent and you decide to educate your own children, you should be able to opt yourself out. It's the same thing. It really is. And you don't want to get into like, okay, you're going to make now a list of opting out because because you don't have children in school or because you're educating your own children, so on and so forth. I just think it gets dangerous and very complicated when you're trying to do that.
Okay. I think you answered that one pretty direct. Let's go to Brian's Red Hat on Twitter says, what do you think of the defense attorney Andrew Branca's proposed Kyle's Law that would punish states and prosecutors for politically motivated charges against people who defend themselves?
Well, I understand why someone asked this question, but the problem is then basically if you create a system that'll punish prosecutors for prosecuting for this or that reason, then all you've done is create a system for whoever's in political power to punish those who don't follow basically what they think is a legitimate prosecution, right? Well, so you don't want that. You don't want a prosecutor who might be have a justice in his mind. He might be conservative, but now he's in a liberal state. You don't want a mechanism to punish that person because they decide not to prosecute somebody when this group of people, these bureaucrats, say that they have to. You absolutely don't want that. What you want is you want a grand jury, just like we talked about.
Right, that's right.
You want a grand jury that decides whether if prosecution is brought up, it's 25 people of the state that sat on the grand jury, or 24 that sat on the grand jury, and they decide whether the prosecutor can prosecute or not. They're the ones doing the investigation. What needs to happen, though, and what's happening now, is the prosecutor and the grand jury need to be separated. Now the prosecutor is pretty much controlling the grand jury. Most of them are in the same building, and it's just like this little branch of the prosecuting office. And they need to be separated. They need to have their own place. They need to be able to have their own funds. They need to be able to perform their own investigation and not be any dependent or influenced by the prosecutor. They need to be able to say no to the prosecutor, and that takes care of all that problem.
Right. And that's just the majority of us don't understand how the system was designed. And so now we don't understand it, so we're trying to find a fix, but the fix is already there.
Yeah, the fix is there. I mean, the Fifth Amendment says that, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless presentment or indictment of a grand jury. That was to stop the state or the government from prosecuting people politically. Because the people and it puts the people's in charge. It also stops them from spending a whole bunch of money. Like in our case, they spent $100 million prosecuting my family. Well, if the grand jury had enough power and enough influence and could look at the truth, they would have said nope, and it would have saved $100 million plus 2 years of prison for us.
Right. And that was just their funds, not your guys' defense funds.
Yeah, that's correct. That wasn't,
that's a whole different ball. All right. From Truth into Light on Instagram. Is there anything that can be done to secure a percentage of farmland to remain as farmland for a set period, possibly permanently? As you said, agriculture is the lifeblood of the state, and without it, much of the state prosperity dies. What can we do to prevent that?
Well, again, I come back to federal funding too, but federally controlled lands. We've got 63% of our land base here in Idaho is federally controlled. 72% of the subsurface mineral rights are controlled by the federal government. And what it's creating is a supply and demand issue. And so you've got, if you take 36%, 37% of the land here in Idaho is private or state.
Right. And
we're all fighting over it. And those lands are the most pristine, agricultural lands that we have, which, is where most of our cities are building on. All our towns were built, around this farm ground that was really good ground that's irrigated, leveled for the most part. So it's the best ground for agriculture. And now we're building on it because we can't build outside on the hills. So the answer is, we need to preserve our agricultural land. But we also need to lower the housing cost. cost of housing, because, both of us have children that just got married.
Right.
You've got 2 sets of them. Yeah. And they're looking at the reality of never owning a home in Idaho.
Right.
I mean, think about that. Think about, to even get into a home that has anything, of the size of be able to raise a family, they're looking at, $400,000 or more.
Right.
And then they look at wages. They're both going to have to go work, good jobs, be able to pay for that type of home and all the expenses that come with it and the living expenses on top of that. So they're looking literally at the possibility of not being able to afford a home in Idaho. Well, it's all caused by a supply and demand issue. The same reason we're building our homes on agriculture, because we're being controlled by the federal government. 63% of our land mass is controlled by the federal government. And we're talking about 32 million acres. And all we got to do is, like Emmett, where we live, if we could just access the foothills and the land around Emmett that is federally controlled, well, now they can build up there. There's more supply. There's plenty of supply they can build up there, so the cost of housing will drop, and we're not building on our agriculture land, destroying our number one economy in Idaho. And then there's one more effect of the federally controlled land, and that is we are shoving everybody into the cities. And when you do that, you change a culture of the people from conservative to liberal. They think that the eggs come from, the grocery store. They think, you're cutting meat. They think that, the meat was made in the back room of Albertsons. They don't understand that it takes land and resources and people working that and all that happens in order to put meat or any other type of food on their table. They lose that disconnect because all they're surrounded by is cars and smog and roads and regulation and all of that. They lose their conservative values, and that's what's going on. So 3 things, all caused because of federally controlled land: affordable housing crisis, we're building on agriculture, and we're losing our conservative identity.
So you see where that's going to come in, right? Once you get through the primaries and you're going to be going against someone with a D in front of their name, they're going to go, Ammon wants to make everyone a conservative in the state of Idaho.
I'm going to say, you're damn right. You're damn right I am.
All right. Well, I don't know. There's a lot more questions, but I think we've run out of time. Was there anything you wanted to – any other questions that you really wanted to touch on? Or
no, there's a lot of like I said, there's a lot of questions that we want to answer. We'll get better at this too. This is our first one. We'll be a little more precise, be able to say and answer questions a little quicker and get through this stuff. But I just want people to understand that there is a real challenge that we have here in Idaho. Like we are facing the reality that if we continue the way we're going, because we're making decisions right now that Oregon made, the same decisions in 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I grew up in Nevada, and Nevada was an ultra conservative state. And if you would have told me that when I got 40 years old that Nevada was going to be Democrat and liberal, I would have said no way. But that's what's happened. And it's happened a lot because of this federally controlled land. It's shoved everybody to these big cities. No one can use the land resources. I mean, Nevada's 89% federally controlled. That means 11% of its land is private or state land, and the rest is federally controlled. And even more of that is of the resources. Well, Nevada is a silver state. They built themselves upon mining. And now you can't even mine in Nevada unless you're a huge corporation that gets permission from the federal government. That's the way we're going. And so the same things are happening in Idaho. The same thing happened in Oregon, Washington, California, Colorado, New Mexico, all those. And the decisions that Idaho is making, the Idaho leaders are making, the government is making, are the same decisions that were made in Oregon and Nevada and Washington and so forth. So where do you think it's going to put us? It's going to put us just like Oregon, just like California. That's where we're going. I mean, and I'm not being bashful about it. So it's going to take somebody to get in there and stop this process, to change it, to turn it around, to fight for it. And that's what I'm offering. Like, I might not be the smoothest guy. I might be rough around the edges, yeah. But I'm going to make sure that Idaho remains Idaho. That's what I'm going to do.
Well, and one of the things that will allow you to do that is you're able to think. You're able to open your mind up to different opportunities, other people's positions. You're able to see the big picture.
Yeah.
And what's so frustrating is the tribalism that is inherent in politics, in our communities. It's you're in this tribe, I'm going to support that tribe. No, not even if I know it doesn't make sense. Right. And so that's why when you asked me to join you on the campaign, I was like, I don't even know what you're running on. But I said I would because I know you're a principled guy. You would do what was principally correct, even if it somehow affected you negatively, individually, or in your business or something like that. And I said, so that's what we need. And so I'm hopeful that these will take off, that the people who are watching now will share with their friends, their family, their neighbors. Put it out everywhere you can on any social media platform that you like. So that you guys can hear the real Ammon, get it straight from Ammon direct, not some media spin or federal spin. Get it from Ammon. Bring us your questions for the next podcast. We'll try to get it through as many as we can. But then we want to just basically end on a happy Thanksgiving. We got Thanksgiving in a couple days. It's a wonderful thing that we do as a nation.
Yep.
And so we wish you guys a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
We have a great opportunity to be thankful. I mean, we still live in a wonderful land. We still have most of our freedoms intact, at least, in being able to exercise them. And we have a lot to be grateful for. So grateful for you being here, grateful for the studio being able to come in here and do this. I do want to give a plug because on December 11th, we're having a Christmas evening black tie affair, and we're wanting to sell tickets to that, and people come and enjoy that. It's going to be music, dinner. It's going to be a time where you can take your spouse to this event and take her on a date, or him on a date. Whoever controls the money, right, goes that way. Anyway, so want to invite you to that, and you buy tickets at votebundy.com. You go to the events and select that event, and you can buy them there, and everybody's welcome.
Now, this is a limited space venue. So once we sell out, it's out. Yep. This is one of your first main fundraisers that you're doing as a campaign. But with everything you've done to date, it's not just about making money, because that's hard for you. I mean, you make money through the private sector. Right,
that's
asking
right.
for donations, it's hard for you, right?
It is. It really is.
But even in this fundraiser, like looking at what is going to go into to make it, we're spending a lot of money on this fundraiser. But that's because something that kind of speaks to who you are and how you will govern is that you're going to try to give these people, they're going to spend some money, but you're going to make sure they have a great time.
Yeah.
Right. You are going to use their time that they're investing, their money, to give them something that they'll be grateful for and they'll benefit from. Yeah. And that just kind of illustrates what your mindset is and why you would be a great governor of Idaho.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think if you've been to one of our events, you'll know what Aaron's talking about, and this one will be even better because it's going to be fun. It's going to be just the adults. We're going to be able to, sit down, have a great dinner, black tie event, everything that you can imagine with a black tie event. That's surely going to happen, right? So anyway, it's going to be great, and everybody's invited. Please go to votebundy.com for all our campaign videos, our campaign, the Keep Idaho plan, and then of course to events and to support. So we're going to be doing this every week.
Okay.
Okay, this is going to be a weekly thing that we do. We're going to be collecting answers throughout the week, and then we will be answering those questions the best we can. Again, this was the first one we've done, so they'll just get better and better, and you can go to the website. They'll be linked there so you can see the old ones that we've done. Pass them around, send them everywhere, and this is what we're doing. So very good. Thank you.
All right. I think we got it.